I think the hardest part for me was just self-confidence. My issues were a mix of gender and age. It's not external. It's not people telling you, oh, you're a woman, you can't do this. But more the ability to speak up, the ability to find your voice. And I think time, competence heals that.
Talking about growth, right, and the way you've scaled the fund house here at Edelweiss, when you look at mutual funds itself, by definition, they're long-term instruments. But we live today in an era that's obsessed with instant returns, quarterly wins. So how do you think of leadership in the long run?
In India, there is no terminal rate of growth. Could you believe one of India's largest private sector banks after 20 years, has it stopped growing or is it growing at 4-5%? No, the India opportunity is so large that if you really can think decadally, it's very, very powerful. And I think I am 8 years into building this. I actually think the fun is just getting started. We really value, for instance, longevity of employees. Externally, it's hard because investment time horizons are shrinking.
You've always been vocal about the fact that women in India are strong savers, but not essentially investors.
Really smart, really talented women who've gone to some of the best educational institutes in this country saying, if finance nahi samajh aata hai, it's boring or I'm not a numbers person. The invisible costs of outsourcing can be very, very dangerous. I've seen women earn and then have a divorce overnight and not know where 20 years of earning are. Go get yourself financially literate. So Mango Millionaire is supposed to be a cooking equivalent guide where you're scared to enter the kitchen, but by the end of it, you're able to cook yourself a basic meal.
Women and ambition and motherhood in that journey, right? How has that sort of reshaped and not reduced your definition of success and leadership?
It's about time we stop scaring women. And I remember I was very scared when I was pregnant. It all feels very overwhelming. I genuinely believe the glass ceilings are in your head. Motherhood hasn't made me less ambitious, it's made me sharper about my priorities.
Welcome to She Sparks, where we zoom in on those who don't just break barriers but redefine what's possible. This is part of our Road to She Sparks series, where we spotlight women leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs shaping the economy, communities and culture. I'm Shivani Muthana, and today we get up close with Radhika Gupta, the MD and CEO of Edelweiss Mutual Fund, who is also one of the most influential voices in investing, wealth creation and financial inclusion. Shaped by global experience and a founder who has built and scaled businesses, Radhika has consistently challenged the short-term mindset in markets, leadership, as well as in how we define success. Beyond the balance sheet, she champions women's financial agency, advocating how we own our money, decisions and choices. Radhika, truly a pleasure to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Shivani.
Radhika, my first question to you, right, beyond and before becoming the CEO, a fund manager and a public voice when it comes to wealth creation, what were some of the personal and professional aspects of your journey that shaped how you look at ambition, resilience and success?
So I think in my generation of women, we weren't as fortunate to grow up with female role models. And with no disrespect, if you look at the 90s, we had very few visible faces of what women's ambition looked like beyond maybe the entertainment industry and Miss Indias, etc. And if you didn't aspire to be that, while there were women bankers, etc. out there, the stories weren't well known. So I think for many of us, including me, our journey, our ambition was what we got from home, and also a gradual journey of discovery. Now, I grew up, and I think like many people of that era, with parents who had never worked in corporate India. My father worked in government. The public sector is a very different place than the private sector. My mother was an educator. So when it came to making career choices, I was sort of figuring my way out in that sense. There was a sense of inherent push and ambition that they wanted their daughter to do well. But that was really all it was. And so I think my 20s was just finding my feet. And then it was later in my 30s that, I channelized myself in one direction and really figured out this is what I like and this is where I want to go deeper.
So if you look at your trajectory, right, you've done Wharton, McKinsey, you've essentially been a student of a movement across countries, careers, Wall Street, and then went on to become one of the youngest CEOs of an Indian mutual fund house. When you look at large public institutions such as these, they define success very narrowly by speed, external validation and titles. How did you sort of make it your own in terms of even the mental and internal self-worth decisions that you took?
It's a very interesting question. It's probably not one I've spoken much about before. But I think when you graduate from any campus and you're young, you are taught to define success by brand, starting salary, etc. I mean, at the campus, I graduated from Wharton, which is a very prestigious Ivy League campus, sort of working at Goldman Sachs, working at McKinsey, working at big brands was what everybody sought. Because honestly, society, whether it's in India or whether it's in the United States or whether it's in Europe, teaches you no better. I think that has changed a little bit with the whole startup movement in India, where we've actually started looking beyond the label and the initial paycheck to the purpose, to the excitement of what we can build. But again, when you were graduating in the 2000s, it was about the brand you had, it was about the label you had, and I think you were taught to seek excitement in that. So my first few career stints are exactly that, Wharton, Microsoft, McKinsey. I think as you grow older in your career, you start to understand what success means to you. And for me, it's not about the label I'm working in, it's about the impact I can make in that role. I've often found, and I tell young people this, that a smaller, more boutique organization or doing something of your own, because I've also been entrepreneur in one stint, lets you expand the boundaries of what you can do a lot more. It lets you take a lot more risk. The success is yours, the failure is yours, the accountability is yours, the authority, good, bad, everything is yours. But it takes a little bit of time to get comfortable with that. I see a lot of young people still not comfortable with it today. They seek the comfort of a large brand. But I've worked for some wonderful boutique brands, including Forefront Capital, which was my own startup, and Edelweiss Mutual Fund, which was as good as a startup when I started building it. And I think the journey of creating something from scratch, the impact that you can make, the growth that you can have is just incredible.
Talking about growth, right, and the way you've scaled the fund house here at Edelweiss, when you look at mutual funds itself, by definition, they're long-term instruments. But we live today in an era that's obsessed with instant returns, quarterly wins. So how do you think of leadership in the long run, both at your organization and even for investors investing for the long term?
Oh, it's hard. I mean, I think it's internally easier than it is externally. Because internally, honestly, our two prime shareholders, whether it's Rashesh or now Westbridge Capital, both of who, our shareholders always talk about building in decades. There's a misnomer when you learn theoretical finance and you look at valuing a company, you always say that after a few years, a company achieves a terminal rate of growth, after which it starts growing at 5-6%. And Rashesh always tells us, in India, there is no terminal rate of growth. Could you believe one of India's largest private sector banks, after 20 years, has it stopped growing, or is it growing at 4-5%? No, the India opportunity is so large that if you really can think decadally, it's very, very powerful. And I think I am 8 years into building this. I actually think the fun is just getting started. We really value, for instance, longevity of employees. So among the things that we actively seek or actively work towards, having people, having leadership who's there with us, who's continuous with us is super important. So I haven't had any meaningful leadership turnover in the last 8-9 years. And I think much of the success of the organization is the fact that people stick together. So internally, I think it's a little easier. Externally, it's hard because investment time horizons are shrinking. I personally check my portfolio once a quarter, but if I go to an investor meet and ask people, do a show of hands and say, how often do you check your portfolio? Most people will say once a day, multiple times a day. And I keep asking what changes. Now, I think there what we have to do is communication. We have to keep talking about the long term. So even in a lot of investor content, we'll talk about the India story. We'll talk about not which stock to buy, but about thinking of India as a country. like a stock over the next 10 years and what makes it exciting. When someone pushes us, we have a case where a fund is doing particularly well and people are asking us, can I invest for 3 to 6 months? And we're pushing back and saying, no, expand your time horizon. So there's a constant pushback to say, let's look a little long term.
Great. So I want to then double click on the book that you've also written recently, right? The Mango Millionaire. How does that tie in with this investment philosophy of yours and how you look at sustainable leadership as well?
So I think Mango Millionaire is about arming people to make better decisions. There is a lot of questioning that people do after they make an investment, and there's too little research and study they do before they make an investment. And I've done hundreds and thousands of investor education programs with men, women, affluent, less affluent, north, south, east, west. And there are just so many basic misconceptions about investment. With a lot of the women lot, just fear of jumping into the pie. And I genuinely believe that 95% of books in the finance field are written for 5% of people. And those are the 5% of people that understand the language and the terminology and the subject. But not even 5% of books are written for the 95% of people who really don't know what the word risk means, don't know how to distinguish a stock from a bond, and they actually need it. So Mango Millionaire is supposed to be a cooking equivalent guide where you're scared to enter the kitchen, but by the end of it, you're able to cook yourself a basic meal. I think that was the idea.
When you look at your startup journey as well, what sort of lessons do you carry from building Forefront Capital to scaling Edelweiss Mutual Fund? Because there it was a startup, and now you're dealing with millions of retail investors.
So I think everyone should have a startup journey as part of their story, because it teaches you a lot personally. I think at the heart of my learning from Forefront Capital, which is very core to what we do at Edelweiss Mutual Fund, is design for the customer. And the customer is really the sun around which you revolve. And I tell all startups that I mentor also this. All of us have the ability to fall in love with what we do, products that we produce, whether they are financial or whether they are other consumer products. But you really have to ask yourself, is what I'm building solving a problem for someone? And if you're able to make money doing that, you will succeed. So I think customer at the core, because I spent so much time in Forefront Capital experimenting with different products, being hands-on. I think the second thing is that the importance of being in the trenches, getting that customer feedback, being with your distributors. I don't think businesses are run out of boardrooms. I mean, in my early years of Edelweiss Mutual Fund, I was traveling 4 days a week, every week, meeting distribution partners, either in small groups or large groups or one-on-one. I still answer customer queries on social media for Edelweiss Mutual Fund. So I think being in the trenches is very, very important. And I think the third is sustainability. So businesses, especially in financial services, can come and go. They can survive and do well in one market cycle. But how do you build something that lasts 20 years?
Now, I want to also look at women in a sense, right, as investors, women, money and agency. I think you've always been vocal about the fact that women in India are strong savers, but not essentially investors, very reluctant when it comes to that. So do you believe this is more of a confidence gap, more of a trust gap, or a conditioning gap?
I think it's a combination of all three. Mass media doesn't do any favors by doing terribly bad role modeling. So I've been a big, critic of Manals, where you see a finance conference and 40 heads will be speaking on it and not a single one is a woman. What message do we send our young girls? The same thing is true of any media made on investing or markets. You grow up believing that this is a male-centric kind of profession, that money is not for me. And from there comes your lack of confidence. So I meet really smart, really talented women who've gone to some of the best educational institutes in this country saying, if finance nahi samajh aata, this is not for me. It's boring, or I'm not a numbers person. And you have to ask yourself, where does the conditioning come from? The other thing is people feel that they can get away with outsourcing this till a crisis comes. I mean, last night I heard one more crisis, in the distant family. Really smart woman, earning, doing everything, managing a house, and now just realizing I have no control of the money I earn. I have no idea whether it's growing, and I am coming up on retirement. And what do I do?
So, what would you say that women should do? Because a lot of them outsource their money decisions to their fathers, their spouses, without really questioning. So, what are some of the invisible costs of doing that? And maybe the first three money decisions that every woman must own, irrespective of her income levels.
I think the invisible costs of outsourcing can be very, very dangerous. And again, I've seen some terrible stories. I've seen women earn and then have a divorce overnight and not know where 20 years of earning are. I've seen women in business families where they may not be earning, but because they didn't know what was going on in their families, they have loans against their name and they're equally liable for that. So the invisible costs of outsourcing, I've seen women in COVID lose a family member and then cry and have breakdowns just because they didn't know where all that money was kept. So the invisible costs of outsourcing are real. My suggestion to women is, one, get financially literate. Either read Mango Millionaire or use all the content that there is online and offline, but go get yourself financially literate. And financially literate doesn't mean you need to learn to pick stocks from tomorrow. It means learning the money basics. Second is, find a good financial advisor. I think the country has a lot of very good mutual fund distributors, financial advisors, including some very talented women who you might feel comfortable. So you don't have to do this yourself. A lot of women have the belief that I have to do this myself. There is help out there. And third, write down what you need from your money and get started with something. This is not something you learn by staring at books and saying, oh, I'm going to do this. It's okay to start. It's okay to make mistakes. And then it's okay to build your plan and get better.
Right. Now, even when it comes to first-time investments, right, we've seen quite an explosion over the, say, past 5 years with a lot of fintech apps also in the fray. But there is still a big gap there. What do you believe needs to be done in terms of financial inclusion? Are people still sort of taking a step back? Is it because of a fear of participation, complexity, or maybe mis-selling in the past that they've witnessed?
I think we've made meaningful progress. Even as women, if you look at the data that AMFI releases, women, especially young women, continue to be one of the faster growing segments. If I look at the industry is about 25% women investors. If I look at our own data, we are 35% plus. So action is happening and progress is happening, but perhaps the pace of change is not as fast as we'd like. I think with women, there is a belief that the language and terminology is very complex. So you don't need more funds. You don't need more products. I don't think women need a pink large cap fund versus a blue large cap fund. I think they need recipe books on how to use all the financial products and ecosystem to build a simple plan that works for them, because they see a list of 50 asset management companies, each running 100 products, and that's 5,000 products to make sense of. And this is just products launched by asset management companies. So I really believe they need cookbooks more than pink product.
Interesting way of putting it. Now, talking about women and ambition and motherhood in that journey, right? You're living through it right now. We've seen that this, like it or not, it is a turning point in how you experience ambition. So how has that sort of reshaped and not reduced your definition of success and leadership?
It's complex, and I think a lot of young women come to me, write to me, talk to their mothers who are friends, and they really worry whether motherhood and ambition can coexist. I think that dilemma for young women is real. It's about time we stopped scaring women. And I remember I was very scared when I was pregnant. A lot of people tried to tell me my life will change. And you would think that that life and change is the arrival of a newborn and also all the beautiful things. But life will change often is associated with, oh, I'm going to lose everything I had. So I was told you won't be able to travel. How will you manage this? And it all feels very overwhelming. And then the noise comes in your head. Forget accelerating ambition. Will I be able to continue on that path? So one is, it's about time we stopped scaring women. It is possible. And I genuinely believe the glass ceilings are in your head. I don't think I have become any less ambitious since being a mother. In fact, I think I've become more ambitious about what I want to do. what you need is a genuine support ecosystem. And I think India is a country that allows you to build a support ecosystem. You need honest conversations with your workplace about the support you need. You need honest conversations with your family, your parents, your in-laws about the support you need. And it's, for many years in this country, women have worn a cape and tried to be superwoman and carry the burden of a lot. Shed the cape, I would argue. Motherhood hasn't made me less ambitious, it's made me sharper about my priorities.
And how to really, prioritize what also makes you happy at the end of the day. So there is still this unspoken expectation for women to constantly justify their choice, right? Because there's an internal guilt as well, whether to lean into work or caregiving. How do you sort of navigate that ambition without apology, in a sense?
I keep telling girls, the one thing I did promise myself, and my mother made me do this when I became a mother, was that I would not feel guilty. Because guilt comes from doing something without purpose. And when I'm caring for my child, there is a purpose in that. And when I'm giving it all to my work, there is a purpose in that. I do believe if you choose to work, if you choose not to work, that's your choice. But if you choose to work, remember why you're spending that time away from your child. For me, I think I've always said this, my work, my profession is a now 20-year-old that I've nurtured. It gives me joy and happiness. It gives me purpose. It lets me build livelihood for my child. So I'm very, very clear why I'm doing this. By the way, he comes to this office all the time, and it's lovely. I think more mothers should do that. More babies should roam around in office. So I think guilt comes from being unclear about purpose, and knowing why you're going to work every day and having that sense of purpose is very important. Also, I think shedding the baggage of being perfect at work. So one day your child's dabba is going to go not perfect. One day there's going to be a costume party where you've not sent the perfect caterpillar costume. One day there's going to be an issue at work. This is all part of the trade, and stop being so harsh on yourself. Because I had my son when I was 38 or 39. And that's also okay, because I was an entrepreneur. I was in the US working, and then I was an entrepreneur in my early 30s. I could barely get time to sleep, and I barely had income. So I didn't want a child at that point. I had multiple miscarriages at that point. So I don't think there is a time-bound formula that you have to do this by this and this by this and that by that. That stresses you out. Lead your life in an individual way. People make different choices. They have different responsibilities towards parents. They may turn startup entrepreneur. So I think there is no set formula on the right time to have kids. But whenever you do, don't approach the decisions out of fear.
I think the way you've chartered your career and your motherhood is exemplary of how things can work out when it is the time. To wrap it off, Radhika, quick questions on one money habit every woman should build early on.
Basic budgeting about what you earn, what you want to spend, and then channelizing a certain amount post-tax into investments. It could be 10%, but a post-tax automated contribution that goes every month.
What do you believe compounds the fastest? Is it confidence, competence, or consistency?
I think consistency compounds well.
Any example that you want to give from your life?
I mean, reputation compounds really well. I think if you are good at something, even in the workplace, reputation compounds really well.
Great. One stereotype about women leadership you wish would disappear?
Oh, that women don't like women. It drives me crazy that like senior women don't like women, and maybe it's a male thing that they like catfights and all. I have met great women in corporate India who are extremely warm and caring and affectionate. So this women don't like women. I don't know where it comes from.
No, yeah, I know it's said a lot, and everybody talks about, how women should carry along other women with them. But my question over there, even in terms of your journey, it's been a male-dominated industry, finance. So how did you sort of plan your own leadership style in this industry?
I'm discovering it, honestly, and I think leadership is something that you're perpetually discovering. I didn't have too many women along the way. It's not something I'm proud of. Now we have more women on the floor, which is amazing. We have probably some of the highest number of women in leadership here, so that it's nice to have that many more girls on the floor, but it wasn't like this. I think the hardest part for me, and my issues were a mix of gender and age, was just self-confidence. It's not external. It's not people telling you, oh, you're a woman, you can't do this. It's less of that, but more the ability to speak up, the ability to find your voice. And I think time heals that. time, competence heals that.
And one thing you'd tell your younger self about success?
It's not like a college campus where there's a rank ordering of the, in India they have this idea of the day zero job. And the day zero job on campuses is like the best job. I mean, there is no day zero definition of success. It's very, very individual, and everybody can be day zero.
Thank you so much for your time and taking us through your journey, and also inspiring, a generation of women in finance and stick to success and ambition while being mothers. Thank you so much for your time, Radhika.
Thank you.